المرسلين وعلى آله وصحابته أجمعين سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم سبحانك لا فهم لنا إلا ما فهمتنا إنك أنت الجواد الكريم وقل رب زدني علما أما بعد. So continuing where we left off, it's been quite a while since it's been the whole month of Ramadan. We were focusing on the activities of Ramadan. So now back to the issue of suluk, which the acquisition of taqwa is the most important and most critical element to bring us upon the proper suluk, which is the proper treading, the proper path that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has prescribed for us. So we talked about greed and avarice and its complications and its devastations, as a matter of fact. And so here we want to look at what's the way in which we can counteract that. What is the prescription? What is the medication, ilaj, of hirs? How can we do away with hirs? So the author says that this is basically this ilaj, or this treatment of hirs, greed, avarice, this incessant desire for the world and the worldly things, it actually is made up of three basic elements. One is patience, second is knowledge, and third is amal, action. And this encompasses 5 elements as well. So the first element is iqtisad fil ma'isha. This is something we really need to think about. And basically it means moderation in the lifestyle, in the way that we live, the way that we eat, the way that we dress, the way that we build our houses, the way that we spend on things. In other words, if we consider that we are travelers in this world, so a traveler doesn't take all his belongings with him on the journey, right? He doesn't take 5-10 suitcases, a change of clothes for every day and occasion. He takes what's necessary, and the lighter his load and the lighter his baggage, the easier his journey is going to be, isn't it? Right? And keeping in mind that once you are undertaking the journey, you have to check in the bags, you have to watch over them, you have to take them, you might need help, and you might have to hire someone to. So similarly, the more worldly baggage we have in our possessions, the more difficult it's going to be to deal in the affairs of life here in the world, and then giving account for all of that in the hereafter. Because we're going to have to give account from where we earned and where we spent. So those who have nothing, right, they're quite lucky in that respect, actually, and it will become manifest there. So the number one thing is to have a moderate lifestyle, and that will be a bit of a challenge for us because the whole Western lifestyle, in fact, globally now, is extravagance. The basis of life is extravagance. So to curtail that slowly, and we would do well to discuss this with our families as well. Like we hear the dars, we go home, we start throwing things out the window, and it's not gonna work. It's gonna backfire. You'll find yourself thrown out the window. Maybe. So we don't want to go into drastic measures, but as we just talked about in another lesson earlier in the day, we talked about shura. وَأَمْرُهُمْ شُورَ بَيْنَهُمْ. So the affairs of Muslims is a shura. It's a consultation. So in families it should be the same way. Although in many of our traditional societies where we may have come from, the father says and everybody does. Well, that used to work. Just like we talked about the marriage, it was arranged and whatever it happened. But things have changed quite a lot. And if we look at the sirat of our Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam, that's how he used to do things. He would consult with people, bring everybody on board. So if we get our family members, our ladies and our children, and discuss these things, what are the positives for doing this? What are the negatives if we don't? What are the difficulties in this life and in the next? So when there's an awareness, and then we all get to the same page, then navigating through this as a unit, be it a family, be it an organization, be it a community, life becomes easier, inshallah, in this world and the next. So, iqtisad fil maisha, living a moderate lifestyle. And of course, that's relative. Moderation in these days would be definitely extravagance in the former days. So it's according, as we say in the urf, according to the ways of the times and the place and situation we find ourselves. Secondly, is qasr al-amal. In other words, we don't have long expectations. As I probably mentioned, earlier that, Nabi Sallallahu made this box, right? He said, this is the lifespan of the human being. These are his expectations. It's going, it has no end. We don't know that we're going to live here for the next, we have this 50-year program or 50-year, plan or 100-year plan. Plan good things. There's no problem about that because niyatul mu'min khayr min amalihi. Plan to do good things, but you don't know how long you're going to live, so that even if you don't live, your plan to go do righteous actions will be accepted, right? However, this hope that we're going to, do this and do that, and another big dilemma or big paradox is that many of us, most of us, we think we have to work hard and save up and make a lot of things to give to our children, prepare our children for life. We prepare them with the mental wherewithal. We prepare them with the religious background, prepare them with taqwa, prepare them with qanaat, prepare them with these. Umar ibn Abdul Aziz radiallahu anhu, he was known as the fifth Khalifa al-Rashida. And he, when he died, he had, 13, 14 kids, and he left nothing. He was the Khalifa. He was the ruler of the greatest empire the world has seen, And he was leaving the world with nothing. He left nothing, he didn't have accounts and contingency funds, set up for all of these children of his. And people came and were, criticized. What have you left for your children? He said, I left for them taqwa. He said, if they're salihin, فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ يَتَوَلَّى الصَّالِحِينَ. If they're pious, then Allah is going to look after them. But what am I? And if they're not, then why should I care about them? It seems like a very tough stance for us, But that's what it's about. We were here for that purpose. So if we prepare them with that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as we're going to see, as Nabi Sallallahu says in a very amazing hadith, in India and Pakistan, they read this hadith in every Jummah khutbah. لن تموت النفس حتى تستكمل رزقها فاتقوا الله واجملوا بالطلب وتوكل عليه. And actually it's a hadith. It's a very powerful hadith actually. So, and that is that Nabi ﷺ said that the Ruh al-Qudus, meaning Jibreel ﷺ, actually inspired me with this to explain this to you people, that no nafs is going to die until it completes its rizq. Whatever has been written before the child actually came out of the womb, and that was before, since eternity and Law al-Mahfuz, nobody's going to die until they finish that. And when it's finished, nobody's going to live longer. Somebody asked me, are you going to come and visit so-and-so? I said, if I have risk there, then yeah. If I don't, there's no way that I'll be going there. So that's the yaqeen that we need to have. So if we understand, and this is the reality, that we have been allotted a certain amount of portion of the world, and we're going to get that. And so, fattaqullah, so fear Allah, wa ajmilu bit-talab. So he didn't say sit in your place and do nothing. He said, ajmilu fit-talab. In other words, take it easy in your seeking of your sustenance, in moderation, knowing that Allah is going to give you what you're going to. You go through the mechanics, you do what you need to do, what you've been trained to do, what you've been instructed to do, what you feel you need to do. For example, hajatan fi nufusihim. In the Quran, it mentions that the people have these transports that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us from the animals to take us from place to place. For what purpose? One of the purpose is to fulfill the needs that we feel we have in our hearts. I need to do this, I need to go there. It's really We have much more important needs, but we have need, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is looking after that, and He has made transport for that. In any case, we're not going to leave this world until we get our allotted share, and we're not going to get more than that. So relax, take it easy. Do your job, open your business, open your shops, do your farming. Sahaba did the same, but, with this yaqeen in mind, and don't go overboard. And allot a appropriate amount of time for that, day and night as we are today. People say this is a great boon that now we are working online, but the problem of that is that this online never stops. So we need to have a cutoff. This is the time we set for that, and at that time it's cut off, finish. So iqtisad, this moderation in lifestyle, and also shortening our expectations for the world. We're going to get what we're going to get, and why should we have so much expectation? We're travelers here, we're not going to stay here, we're leaving here. Let's prepare, let's deposit into the account of the hereafter where we're going to live forever. There's where we should have our amal, our expectations. And lastly, or I should say thirdly, qana. And whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does give us, we're content with that. That nobody has anymore. All of us are, everybody is, looking at the other, and we're bombarded, with being connected with the social media is really destroying this concept of qina, particularly the youth. Because everybody's got his Facebook page showing that he's in the seventh heaven, or she is. And the fact of the matter is they're all in dungeons of their own desires and their wants and their fancies and hoping. And it's just a facade. But what's happening is this amal, this, the first one that we're talking, shortening it, it's getting expanded. Every time you turn on your phone, you're getting bombarded with this stuff. So to counteract that, we really have to have a game plan. We really have to digital dieting. We really have to sort of curtail that and try and control, our usage of those things, and counteract it by continuously looking into the sayings of our elders and the recitation of Quran and Hadith and the sayings of our pious ancestors and their seerah and their history and how they lived. See how they lived. Okay? And fourthly, think about, as we probably mentioned this earlier, think about how, the tana'um, this, as Nabi ﷺ mentioned, and also Umar mentioned a very amazing riwayat. He says, اخشوشنوا فإن النعمة لن تدوم. Live a bit tough life, because the ni'mat is not going to remain. Now suppose the whole economy crashes and we've been used to all of these luxuries, then what happens? Well, it will crash in any case when our death comes. So the ni'mat is not going to remain forever. All of these, these extravagances are not going to remain. So get used to, simplicity, right? And think of the foolish people who have no guidance, no religious guidance, how they go head over heels in the world, they get caught in it, and it doesn't provide them any suhoor. It, moreover, provides them more depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, and then all of these problems, because of the fact that they have lost their compass, they have lost their objective, and they have made the world their objective. And when we make the world our objective, we become the slaves of the world. If we're slaves of Allah, then the world travels behind us. I might have told you the story, and we'll end with that. Maulana bin Nuri, rahmatullahi alayhi, one of the founder of the school we taught in Pakistan, one of the great ulama, one of the great muhaddithin, particularly of our era. So he had this, he was the epitome of these qualities. I mean, he had a budget, and people used to come, and rich people would say, take this money. He wouldn't take it. So I have my budget. So there's one very pious fellow, he died quite some time ago, and he's a very close friend of the Shaykh bin Nuri. So he came with a big amount of, money and said, take this money, use it for the madrasa. No, I've got plenty. I don't need that. And he started crying, please take it. I said, no. So he had to actually use the restroom. So Maulana went into the bathroom, and they take off their regular shoes and they use the slippers. So he went to the bathroom. So then the Haji Sahib, he took all that money and put in the shoe of Maulana and then ran away, So Maulana came back and then put his foot in the shoe, and his foot, something was stopping his foot. He said, look, if you run after the world, it comes on your head. And if you run away from the world, it comes under your feet. So if we have, and I can say that, I speak, but they actually had the reality. We've seen people who actually lived accordingly, and what kind of lives they had, and blessed lives they had. Very simple, very, down to earth, and they had such a happy existence, and they had so much qanaa and so much happiness you would and radiance of contentment you would find in them. And then lastly, gathering all this luxuries and having all of this wealth, it's going to come with a price, and there's a lot of danger and there's a lot of risk. I probably mentioned also one of my neighbors. He had a brand new Corolla back in the days in the 1980s. That was a big deal, And they had this old car, they used to drive, and that used to sit in the parking lot inside the building compound. I asked him, well, why don't you drive your new car? If I drive that, then people are going to look at it, get jealous, and I'll get the evil eye, and maybe someone's going to try and steal it. I said, well, why did you buy it in the first place? Right? And suppose if we have an old car and somebody bashes us, like in America, it doesn't happen that often. If it does, it's a big deal. But for example, in Pakistan, these countries, everybody's bashing India all the time. So if you're driving a new Porsche or a BMW or Mercedes and somebody bashes into you, it's really going to be a trauma. If you're riding a car that's already bashed up, so, the more the merrier, So living is a simple lifestyle. It has its beauties, It has its simplicity. And living that extravagant lifestyle and having all that money and wealth, it comes with a price in this world, and the anxiety of losing it or being stolen or being jealously coveted, and then ultimately the hisab in the hereafter is the worst part of it. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us tawfiq that these 5 points, if we'll kind of ponder over it a little bit, inshallah, and start, living a bit more moderate lifestyles and putting our focus more on the hereafter, inshallah, Allah will give us tawfiq. Ameen. Alhamdulillah.